How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast. Brendon and Sterling here with you for yet another week of excellent football talk. And I'm Brendon, that's Sterling. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay. It was a bit of a roller coaster week for me football wise, tough Sunday and then an entertaining Thursday. Um Personal, it's more, I'm starting to feel better. Like I don't know, this fucking bug that's going around our city right now, man. It is wiping people out hard. As you guys know, I've been sick for a couple of weeks now. I'm finally, I think, on the mend. It's mostly just like headache and a bit of a runny nose now. So fingers crossed I'm better by Monday because I'm been missing a lot of work the last 2 weeks, which is tough. So
Yeah, and unfortunately, the sports bets aren't making quite the pay yet to
I mean
get
that's not
that.
really I don't condone that being a viable option for making your income.
Yes.
Sports betting, it is not something to rely on. You know me, that's something I just recently got into as a bit more of a fun side hobby thing because I never really enjoyed sports betting just due to the fact that you don't have control over what happens in the game. I'm more of a, bet on poker and stuff like that where, I can control what I'm doing.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah, other than that, it's been pretty good though. How have you been?
Not bad, you know. It was kind of stressful this week for trade deadline day. You know, as a Chicago Bears fan, there was a lot of things where I'm just sitting back going like, please God, please God, please God, please God. But we have a lot of trade talk coming up in this podcast, whether it's going to be in part one, likely part two of the podcast here. But yeah, first off, talking about your Thursday night game where we saw the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Tennessee Titans in what was a game for sure. I know when we were talking about this a little bit beforehand and doing our kind of pre-talk, and it was one of the statements that you said to me was, if you're a true Pittsburgh Steelers fan, you were extremely happy with that game, and everyone else is kind of sitting back going like, yep. But
Yep.
this was a game that had pretty much the entirety of the first quarter dominated by the officials, where it was, flag after flag after flag. And, most of them I would say, yep, no, that's worth being a penalty. And then there was a
Yep.
few where you're just like, okay, cool. But yeah, I kind of finished that game when it was done and over with. I was like, man, like, yes, the Steelers won this, but by no means did they deserve to win it.
No, but I mean, honestly, neither did the Titans.
That's
You know,
the
eh,
problem with that game, though.
well, and that's just it. That is why I say like it was very much Steelers football, and the problem with them this year is it's a tale of two teams. They're either going into a game and they get just completely blown out, and they're going to lose. But if they hang with the team throughout the game, you can almost bet that they're going to come out on top. I mean, Kenny Pickett has 7 fourth quarter comebacks in his short career, which is only a season and a half long. He has more fourth quarter comebacks than anybody in the last year and a half, including Kirk Cousins, who I think is the close second place to that, unless Kirk Cousins might have one more. I'm not sure. That'll change soon because Kirk's done for the year. But I mean, it is. The hope is that as the season progresses, when we get to those games that tend to be tighter, when we get into playoff time, that they avoid that blowout style. Because if they can keep the game close, they've shown that their offense, their defense know how to close out games.
Yeah, and this has really been a team where it's defense, defense, defense,
Yep.
and the and again, I was kind of teasing it with you a little bit earlier, and unfortunately, the Steelers this year, and I know you're not gonna like it, but they're the Minnesota Vikings of last year, where they're the only games that they have been able to win are the one score games. They're 5-0 in
Yep.
that category, and if you put them outside of that, they haven't looked very good, and it's going to be one of those things once they start to get closer to the end of the year. I don't
Yep.
think if they do make the playoffs, which I'm still questionable if they even will, once they get there, it kind of feels like it's going to be a similar situation to the Vikings last year, where they're going to go up against a team and everyone's just going to kind of look at it and go, we don't fear these guys because all we need to do is put 14 up on the board early, and
Yep.
then we can just control the rest of the game. And
Yeah, and that is a very real concern going into the playoffs. You know, depending on placement, where we land, who we're up against in that first round really will matter. Like if we're playing a Chiefs or a Bengals, though, I mean, with the Bengals, it's hard because that division rivalry sometimes can swing in our favor. It's very tough there, but yeah, Chiefs for sure. Like that's one where if we're up against them in that first wild card weekend and it's in KC, then there's no shot.
yeah,
You know, but there's other teams there where they're also very mistake happy, which our defense can capitalize on. So you know, round one against the Bills doesn't necessarily worry me because Josh Allen likes to put the ball in bad positions. Or he likes to run outside the pocket where TJ Watt can decapitate him. You know, like he it's it's tough. That's why I say it's a tale of two teams right now, and
yeah.
it's stressful watching because you don't know what's going to happen. This was the first week where like I messaged you Thursday, and it was like 7 minutes into the game, and I was like, "Wait, we scored on an opening drive? Is it my birthday? We haven't we barely scored in the first half, let alone the first drive of the game." You know, which was extra impressive considering Matt Canada, for the first time in his entire coaching career, was
Was
on the
on the sideline.
sideline calling a game. You know,
Yeah,
he's a primarily a booth coordinator, which you know I've had a big gripe with. I get where you're coming from and others are, where, you know, as the OC being a booth coordinator, you're able to see the field better. But my philosophy has always been you need to be down on the field because when you're in the booth, you can talk to the quarterback, and that's pretty much it. That is all the communication that occurs. When you're down on the field, you can have a guy like Najee Harris come over to you and go, "Hey man, like they're letting me open here in the flat on this side every freaking time we run this screenplay or this jet sweep. Let's throw it to me in the flat. I'm going to be wide open." You know, like, things like that as an
yeah.
example. You have more lines of communication open, which allows for more diversity and more flexibility to change your game plan throughout. And I prefer that.
No, I've always thought that my OC should be on the sideline. I'm more okay with defensive coordinators being up in the booth just because I think they get that aerial view, which kind of shows them a little bit more and they can adjust a little bit better. But I still think they should have a defensive coach down there that they can communicate with and get their players to communicate back with. But yeah, with your OC, I think they should be on the field just for that
Yeah.
exact reason because only time they can get communication in is through a headset when
Yeah.
the quarterback has his helmet on. But yeah, looking at that game, this Steelers team went up against a banged up Tennessee offensive line, which allowed both T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith to kind of get after it a little bit. I forget
Yeah.
who got the third sack. Looking at here, it was Marcus Goldman,
Yep.
former Arizona Cardinal, but they were able to get after it. But you know what? To Tennessee's credit, with how much rotation they had to do with in and out of that line, they put up a pretty decent game on the offensive line against that Steelers defense for what the players that they had in there. Now, if you're
They
saying
did,
this
and I
was your
mean they
starting
were able to
defensive line,
keep T.J. Watt from, you know, racking up the sacks, but I mean the way they did that was by
holding
taking
them,
penalties
yeah,
instead. You know, and that's just it. Even that final drive, there were two of those rushes where T.J. Watt was very obviously held, you know, and no call on the play, and Will Levis is able to move the ball downfield. So that was frustrating to see. 'Cause it's like, I mean, come on, like I know we want to make a game of it, but you can't let the guy just bear hug our rusher and hold him there and not throw the flag on that. Whereas if it had been the other way around, you can bet that would have been a flag 100%.
yeah. Well, and another thing from within this game itself is, these last 2 weeks, I've been really impressed with Will Levis. I have been
Yes.
really, really impressed. And you know what? Going into this game, I knew that Will Levis wasn't going to have that 4 touchdown game just because it's just so unlikely that he was going to be able to do that against the Steelers defense, but he didn't throw a passing touchdown this game. But you know what? Still had respectable numbers. He was 22 for
Mhm.
39, 262 yards, was sacked 4 times, and did have that one interception. But ultimately, he played a vastly better game than Kenny Pickett did. And I'm not just
Yep.
talking from a numbers standpoint, just the eye test. And one thing that they mentioned in the broadcast that I completely agreed with is they were going, you know what, you know, everyone likes to talk about Matt Canada. It's Matt Canada's fault. Blah 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 blah. This and that. But
Mhm.
Kenny Pickett also needs to execute these plays. And they had a little bit of a montage going
Yeah.
into the third quarter where it was like he's got to be able to execute here and here, and I was like, it's
And especially early in the game, that
yes,
is very crucial. Is he's missed a lot of passes in the first half where it could have broken big plays,
yeah,
and that is where he has to clean it up. I don't know how they can get that fire lit under him, because once we get into that final 5 minutes, it's like his adrenaline gets up and he is just on target. Like he's dropping it right where it needs to be for Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, whoever it may be. Like he's hitting those targets when the game is on the line. But earlier on, when he has the opportunity to go out there and make it a 2 or 3 score game on Pittsburgh's behalf, he's just not executing, and that is definitely a problem that he needs to work on.
it's one of those things where I feel like early on in the games, it feels like he's scared that he's gonna make a mistake, and so he's almost kind of avoiding some of it. And the reason that I say that is because I kind of see a lot of those similar mistakes that I saw early on from Justin Fields, where it's like
Yeah.
it almost seems like he's scared to throw an interception and try to take that risky situation, and he's just
Yeah, and so instead he overthrows it,
or
which
he
I get.
holds
Like
on
I'd
to the
rather
ball
an
too long.
incompletion to an interception,
True.
but he needs to start having more confidence in himself and just putting it in there. Because yeah, there were a couple plays this game especially where you hit George Pickens on that crossing route and he's getting 40 plus yards on that catch and run, as opposed to an incomplete pass.
Without a doubt, and very very big, key, and crucial. But we've spent a bunch of time talking on this. We need to get to
Yep.
our official games of this week and our picks. Another thing that we'll talk about once we go through all of these picks is our actual overall record for the entirety of the season. But first, getting into it, where we have the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs heading over to Frankfurt, Germany for our opening game of the week. And Sterling, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, it's been fun watching some of the press interviews and stuff. Obviously,
Guten
the
Tag.
German press is not amused by McDaniel's in the same way that the rest of
We
us
are.
are.
I
Yeah, that
loved
was
when he just walked up. He's like, "Oh, Guten Tag." Oh, it's
right, and just dead silence, and it's like, oh, that's not gonna fly here, buddy.
yeah,
Um, this is tough. I hate picking the games
oversea
across the
games.
pond because it's so hard factoring in the travel and who's going to be able to manage it well and who isn't. Because I mean, there's some guys that jet lag just it destroys them.
Hmm.
And especially this time of year when we're in cold and flu season, the it can mess up some of these guys. Um, I assume with it being in Germany, we're not going to have Taylor Swift at the game. So Travis Kelsey, odds are under 70 yards, probably not going to get a touchdown. That being said, I am still going to go with the Chiefs here, just because I think they're going to be very, very angry after losing a horrible game to the Denver Broncos last week. No touchdowns. Just that was just awful to watch. I could not believe that. Like, granted, the Broncos were due to beat them eventually, but I didn't think it was going to be that easy for them. They
Yeah.
made it look easy against the Chiefs. So I think the Chiefs are going to come in with the chip. We're going to see some fancy footwork and fancy plays from Mahomes here. He seems to do well on the road, and so I don't have any problems there. He'll likely be getting Pacheco and Hardman involved a little bit more. And I think Kelsey will break the whole Taylor
Taylor Swift
Swift
not
when
being
she's
there.
there, when she's not there sort of thing. I think he will actually have a good game and likely be over 100 yards with at least one score. And so
Yeah,
I do think the Chiefs will win here.
if this was the States, I would have to agree with you that it would likely be the Chiefs. But a stat that I read earlier this week where it said that teams that travel earlier in the week and practice there, like whether it's in England, Germany, Spain, whatever, when they go over there, they are undefeated
Yeah, I mean
this
that makes
season.
sense because it
And
gives you more time to recover from that jet lag.
yeah, and the Chiefs only got there on Thursday. So with how close these two teams
Yeah.
are in play style, and we still don't know how Mahomes is doing after suffering that flu from last week. And yeah, you know what? He was better going into that Denver Broncos game, but you could clearly see that he was still being affected by both the altitude and due to that sickness. And you and I both know that even a week after having the flu, going out there and doing something extremely physical,
Yep.
your body is just not doing well. And that's if you're at home. But he has to fly all the way over to Germany, which is I think from KC like a solid like 7 hour flight, which is a hell of a difference that he's gonna have to deal with. And yeah, so for me, I have the Dolphins winning this one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's fair. This is one of those ones that was tough to pick for me for sure.
yeah,
I went back and forth a bunch of times on it.
I think the most annoying part about this game is this is probably gonna be one of the best games this week. And for
Right?
us, who was on the West Coast, not exactly the West Coast, but it's going to
Close.
be a 7:30 start for us, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And in Germany, it's a 2 p.m. start.
Yeah.
So you're sitting back going there, why can't you push that back to, for instance, like 5 o'clock so it's a prime time game in Germany and we get it at like 9 o'clock instead of, so that way we can roll from 9 o'clock into the 11 o'clock games and it's like boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom, awesome. It,
Well, the thing we don't always factor in when you're looking at going to England and Germany is, with Germany, I bet you there's probably one or two very big Bundesliga games going on at that 5 o'clock time slot. And so they were like, yeah, come to Frankfurt, but you're playing at 2 because we got big soccer fixtures at 5 and you're not
yeah,
competing directly with those.
yeah. Which is realistically the case for that, but
Well, yeah, I mean, they got to focus on their local leagues
yeah.
there, which, I mean, outside of the Premier League, Bundesliga's probably one of the biggest ones in the world.
Oh, it 1000% is. It's that in La Liga in Spain. I'm pretty sure
Yep,
that's
and La
where.
Liga, yeah.
Yeah, and so like those are the main three, and so yeah. But moving over now
Yeah.
to the Falcons taking on the now Kirk Cousins-less Minnesota Vikings, and the Vikings were a team this year that were kind of they were a little bit of a roller coaster of emotions where they're up and down, up and down. They're 4-4, and they looked like they were starting to finally figure things out at after that Chicago Bears game. And now with Kirk
Hmm.
Cousins out, it almost kind of feels like the season's just done. Obviously, they traded for Joshua Dobbs with the Cardinals, but he's not going to be playing this week. Um, the Atlanta Falcons, man, they are not a good team, but I have them beating this Vikings team just because the Vikings offense I just don't think is going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, and that's ultimately it with the Vikings right now. Remains to be seen what comes of this trade. It was something that we will talk about later when we do the trade talk stuff. But yeah, without Dobbs playing, still no Justin Jefferson there. It's going to be a messy week for the Vikings. I think this is really a game where they got to look at it and go, we just have to keep everybody else healthy at this point until we can get Dobbs up to speed, until we can get Justin Jefferson back, and then maybe, just maybe, if there's a window there, we might be able to push for a wild card spot here if we can get things rolling at the right time. Because I mean, there's still a lot of talent on this offense for the Vikings. It's just a matter of getting it all connected and working well. And I know you've been down on the Falcons all year. I've been wishy-washy back and forth. Like they've got the talent
So
there.
much talent.
But them too, as far as I know, they're without Ritter this week. And so
Yeah,
they're
it
rolling with
is.
backup as well.
But their backup was the backup in Washington, Taylor Heineke. So Taylor
Taylor
Heineke,
Heineke, yeah.
I feel a lot more confident going into this game. And for me, the reason I've been so down on the Falcons is because I think Arthur Smith is an idiot. He is a
Yeah, yeah.
terrible, terrible coach.
And really that's what it comes down to for both of us with most of the teams that we keep shitting on. It's not the talent, it's the coaching staff for the most part, whether it be the Falcons or the Chargers,
Or the
you know,
Bears.
it, or the Steelers. Like anytime we're down on them, it's largely due to the coaching and the decisions that are being made above the player level.
Yeah.
And that is the issue in Atlanta, in my opinion, because they have the talent there, even with Heineke playing. You got Robinson and Algier and
Drake May
Drake
and or no, not Drake May,
or
Drake
Drake
London,
London,
and then you also have Kyle
Kyle Pitts, who
Pitts.
has finally been looking a little bit more like the tight end we thought he might be when he got drafted. So
But
yeah, I
imagine
mean,
being Arthur Smith and going, okay, we drafted um, Robinson in the first round this year. A few years
yep,
ago, or the year before, we drafted Drake London. The year before that, we drafted Kyle Pitts. And you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna use their backups as a primary option above these guys. We're gonna take one of the most gifted, athletic tight ends to have ever come into the NFL and turn him into a blocking tight end.
yep,
Because you know what? That's an intelligent idea. He's going to be a great blocking tight end because he's an athletic freak. But
yep.
I would much rather him just run a 5 yard out route, catch the ball, and go 45 yards down the field and just get a massive touchdown. But Arthur Smith is like, no, that's not good enough.
No.
And
No,
then
I think we're going to see quite a bit of a shakeup throughout the league this year in some of the coaching staffs at the end of the season for
we have
sure.
we
I
have
mean,
to.
we've already seen one team after the trade deadline completely blow it up, which again, we will talk about. But going back to this game, I do agree with you. I think the Falcons just they have more in place right now. The only thing they're really shifting to is Taylor Heineke, which really it feels like a sidestep from Ritter to
It feels
Heineke.
like an upgrade, honestly.
I wouldn't say an upgrade. I'm still sold on Ritter. Like I said last year, if we hadn't got Pickett, I would have been happy with Ritter because he had a very high ceiling with the right coaching. And I still think he has that potential to turn into something special. It's just he needs that coaching change, much like Kenny Pickett does right now. Either way, the Vikings, it's just survive at this point. They're not ready to thrive yet. And so the Falcons will likely win this game.
Yeah. The only difference I have there is saying the Vikings, it's not really try to survive. At this point, your season's over. I truly believe the Vikings season is over and they're just going to pack it in.
I mean, I would think that too, except for what Joshua Dobbs was able to do with the Cardinals so far. Like we said, they were the best one-win team so far this season. And that was largely due to him because James Conner went out, and so he's been shouldering that team and keeping them in games, which makes me think, you put him on a team like Minnesota, who arguably you could have plugged another quarterback in where Kirk Cousins was. If you've got Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison, you've got a lot of good weapons there for any quarterback who has that accuracy ability, which Joshua Dobbs does have. And so that's why I say it's going to be a couple weeks where they're likely going to drop from 4-4 to like maybe 5-6 or 4-7 even. But that still leaves a window open in with the games they've got left against NFC North teams still to come. We could see them squeak out some wins at the end and maybe just maybe squeak into a playoff spot. You never know because there is the potential there. We can't forget about how talented Justin Jefferson is. When he comes back from this injury, he has the potential to turn any quarterback into an elite level quarterback because of what he does on the field. And so this could be something where, yeah, we're writing them off for now, but check back with me in 3 weeks. Once Joshua Dobbs is a little more comfortable and Justin Jefferson's back, I might have a different opinion on this Vikings team at that point because I think there is a possibility there.
And you know what? I will definitely be checking back with you um, during that time because I think at this point the Vikings are done. I don't
Yeah,
think they win another game this year.
no.
And now moving over to a game that I don't think either of us really care all too much about, where we see the Browns take on the Cardinals, and the Browns get their superstar quarterback in Deshaun Watson back. And when I say superstar, I'm using heavy air quotes because he's terrible. Um, this was a little bit of a tough game for me to pick because the Browns have an unbelievable defense. But when
Yep.
Deshaun Watson has been playing this year, he has been terrible. And he's almost, and well, not almost, he's cost them games.
Hmm.
And, uh, but the Cardinals, man, obviously not having Joshua Dobbs there, Kyler Murray likely not going to play.
Which is bizarre to me. Like, if you're gonna ship Dobbs out, I feel like you have to be putting Kyler Murray back in at that point,
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And
right? Like,
for
but this
me,
this, oh,
well, I truly think the Cardinals, they're looking at it now and they realize it's like, okay, currently, if the draft was today, we have the number one overall pick. We knew we weren't going to be good this year.
hmm,
And if we can just tank the rest of the year away, we've shown throughout the first 8 weeks of the season that we were better than what people expected us to be. But,
yeah,
with a 1-7 record, at this, even if we go on this magical run, the chances of us making the playoffs are low. Like I'm not gonna say it's 0%, but I'm pretty sure it's like a 1% odd that the
yeah.
Cardinals are going to make the playoffs. I think two more losses and they would be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. And there's just no way that this Cardinals team is gonna beat the Browns, but it's gonna be ugly, ugly football.
It is gonna be ugly, and see, for me, it's not about making the playoffs having Kyler Murray in there. It's like we talked about last week with getting Justin Fields back on the field. Either one of these teams, if they're going to go after their next quarterback in, say, Caleb Williams, they've got to find a way to move on from their current one. The Bears are in a better position because they haven't paid Justin Fields yet. That's
Yes,
where the
yes.
Cardinals are in tough because they've paid Kyler Murray already. He's on the hook for a large sum, which to me, I look at that and go, well, we got to get him on the field. We got to get some highlight reel packages for him so that one of these other teams that is quarterback needy, Raiders, maybe we
Vikings.
can. Uh, but if it was going to be the Vikings, it would have been this week. It would have been the instead of Josh Dobbs, which again
For
that
sure.
that was
We're going to talk about that a little
we
bit
will.
later, but
Exactly, and so, but that's what confuses me. And yeah, Deshaun Watson is trash. I said it at the start of the year. Everybody was all hyped on him. Oh, he's going to turn this Browns team around. I was like, no, it's just going to be more brown in the pants. That's all it is, and that's all I expected from him. I had no faith in Deshaun Watson turning it around. They should just roll with PJ Walker. Let Deshaun Watson go home, take his money, hire a personal masseuse, and just sit on his couch getting tug jobs all day. Because that's obviously what he wants to do. All right. And it increases the Browns' odds of winning. Granted, I think this is the best situation for the Browns to put Deshaun Watson back in because they're probably looking at it going, even if he throws 6 interceptions, he can't possibly lose this game for us against the Cardinals.
yeah.
You know me. I want the Browns to lose just because I love watching the Browns lose. This defense is just too good, though.
Yeah.
And against who knows at quarterback, still no James Conner in there. It's going to be ugly for the Arizona offense. I feel bad for Hollywood Brown not getting traded out of there. I really thought they were going to be able to trade him away at the deadline. I'm guessing nobody offered enough.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the quarterback starting for the game, I want to know if you've ever heard of him. Clayton Tune.
nope.
Drafted in the fifth round of this year's draft, coming out of Houston. Um,
Well, get ready to meet Miles Garrett. I mean,
pretty
it's
Pretty much, yeah.
I don't see a way that even Deshaun Watson can cost the Browns this game. So the Browns likely will win this. You know, it should be an easy win for them with how good this defense has played. But yeah, I guess ultimately it comes down to what sort of boneheaded moves Deshaun Watson makes in there with his wonky shoulder.
Yeah. And now moving over to a game that is also probably another one that I don't think either of us are really going to care much about, and that's the Rams taking on the Packers. And I went on my little spiel a couple weeks ago where I basically declared that Jordan Love fucking sucks. He's a terrible quarterback. And this week, both the Packers GM and Packers fans are kind of now sitting at this point of going like, we don't think that he's actually that good. And the
Yep.
Packers management staff came out and said, it's like, we're not entirely sure that if Jordan Love is the future of this program. And let me tell you, as a Chicago Bears fan, I'm loving it. Get the McDonald's theme music out. Ba 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 ba. I'm loving it.
Yep.
And but unfortunately, they're also playing the Rams, who have kind of been again one of those teams that's been up and down roller coaster this year. And with Matthew Stafford being injured, I'm not sure if he's actually in the starting lineup. This game is in Green Bay, but taking a look here, Matthew Stafford is questionable. So that's going to be a very very interesting thing to see and play out. If Matthew Stafford is playing, I would say this game is definitely more in the hands of the Rams, but if he's not, this is just going to be an ugly football game to watch. But I'm going under the assumption that he is going to play, so I'm taking the Rams over the Packers.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll start out there myself. Whether he's playing or not, I was planning on taking the Rams over the Packers in this game just because even when the Packers are in a position to win, Jordan Love is finding ways to lose. He's fallen over on his offensive line. He's throwing bad picks. It's not looked good. And so I don't really have a whole lot of faith. Even with another quarterback in there for the Rams, you still got Cooper Kupp and Puka Nakua. You still got Aaron Donald on defense. Like
Yeah,
the Rams, they've been a very middling team, but they've performed very well against poor teams. And that is what the Packers are. They are a poor team right now. And I think the Rams McVay will find a way to win that game, whether Stafford's in or not.
yeah,
And so I'm not too concerned there.
yeah. And I didn't realize Jordan Love was colorblind because he really likes to throw to the opposite team.
And unless it's the Bears.
Moving on. Fuck you. I hate the Packers. The Commanders are taking on the Patriots in what is another dumpster fire kind of game with two teams that are just not very good.
Yep.
And the Commanders, they're on pace to allow Sam Howell to be the most sacked quarterback ever. And like I'm pretty sure he has over 40, or I think he's close to 50 sacks at the halfway mark, which you just sit back and go, "Oh my god, how is he
Yeah.
still alive?" And unfortunately though, this is the Patriots, who currently with Mac Jones, again, you're kind of talking that same thing with Jordan Love, where you're just like, the dude just does not have it, and everyone else that they would have a situation of them putting in, it's just not any better. So the Patriots are in this just terrible spot, and of course the Commanders, they traded away their two best edge rushers in Montez Sweat and Chase Young, and it's just such a weird game to try to pick, but I have no faith in Mac Jones as a quarterback. So that's the reason why I have the Commanders winning this game in Foxborough, but it
Yep.
is going to be a extraordinarily tough game to watch, and I feel bad for all those fans.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel bad for the Patriots fans. They had so much time with Tom Brady, and I am
Hate the
going to
Patriots.
pick the Patriots to win this game for selfish reasons because I do not want them having first overall pick. All right, they're hovering around the basement right now.
Hmm.
Do you really want Bill Belichick to get Caleb Williams? Like,
Well, you have to
fuck
remember
no.
is that the Patriots, they have to get past both the Panthers, the Bears, and the
Yep.
Cardinals. Which Bears more realistic that they can get past because the
Yep.
Bears, they have to face the Vikings twice this year. They have to face the Cardinals. They have to face the Browns. I can see the Bears squeezing out 3 more wins this year. And
Mm.
but then right there, you have to get past the Cardinals, who likely at this moment are in active tank mode. And the Panthers, yes, they got
Yeah.
their first win, but they are still terrible.
Yeah, I mean they got their first win. Ultimately, the Texans handed them that win, really,
Yeah.
in my opinion. But that's sort of my thought on it. So I want zero question that Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft can even go in there and be like, "Well, we've got the fourth pick. Let's throw all our picks at the first overall pick and get Caleb Williams in here because then Drake May is still there. I mean, even that, I don't want them getting any of these quarterbacks this year. Whether it be Caleb Williams, Drake May, is it Bo Nix? Like none. Like no, I do not want Bill Belichick getting another potential Hall of Fame quarterback. Leave him with Mac Jones. And the
Well,
Commanders, like you said, their defense is now depleted. That was really the only thing keeping them in games at this point was the defense getting after the other team and keeping them around. And that's not likely to happen anymore. So Sam Howell is going to have to get sacked 4 or 5 times a game and still be able to throw touchdown after touchdown to keep up with these teams. Granted, Patriots Commanders, I don't imagine we're going to see more than 3 total touchdowns throughout the game. But I do think the Patriots will be able to win this one because the Commanders are going to be going in, likely looking at, throwing in the towel on their season with the way they traded both those guys away. It doesn't feel like they're feeling too good about their odds.
yeah, I still like that Commanders D line with Deron Payne and
Yeah,
why am I forgetting the other guy? Doesn't matter at this
but
moment, but we're
it's very
both.
much depleted now, though.
It is having two really solid or having two really good defensive tackles up the middle is going to cause Mac Jones problems, but they were also definitely helped out by those guys on the edge, and those guys on the edge were helped out by
Yeah,
those guys
you
in the
know,
middle. So
with those guys not being on the edge, this might finally be that breakout style game with the Patriots for Ezekiel Elliott. Because he's going to be able to get the ball to the outside a little bit more this week,
yeah,
and
but
so
this
he
was
might.
just one of those games where it,
It
it was
was
it was kind of flip a
flip a
coin,
coin.
and whatever trash can lands down is I guess the team. But we kind of I guess our coins were on different sides there. But moving over
Exactly.
to my game of the week, where we have the Saints taking on the Bears in New Orleans. Justin Fields still out. He was seen practicing and throwing the last 2 days, which in my opinion means absolute dick.
Yep.
Um, but this Bears team, yes, they acquired Montez Sweat. They did not trade Jalen Johnson away. Um,
Yeah.
the defense has been really starting to come together this year. They're gonna miss Tremaine Edmonds this week. He got hurt in last week's game, but I think the Chicago Bears offense in the Mercedes Superdome is just gonna struggle against
Yeah.
this Saints defense, and that's truly what I think it's gonna be. Is it's just gonna be the Bears offense struggling against the Saints defense when it's gonna be loud. It's gonna be tough to play, and I think the Bears defense is gonna be half decent against the Saints offense because Derek Carr, granted he came off his best game the week prior to, but
hmm
they have not been great to say the least.
No, and I think this game will start off with the Bears defense looking really good. The unfortunate thing is it's going to run into this situation of the offense for the Bears isn't going to be able to stay on the field enough
Yeah.
and give those guys enough time to rest. They're going to get tired, and the Saints eventually will start to run that score up on the Bears and likely make an easy day, an
Yeah.
easy win for the Saints.
If I were to put a prediction on the score for this game, I think it's probably going to be somewhere of like a 28-10, where it's not going to be necessarily one of those games where it's like, oh my god, they ran away with it here, but it's going to be like, okay, yeah, they won. They won.
No, I think this is more of a, you know, the Bears would like a moral victory here. Like, if is Montez Sweat going to be playing this
He is going to
weekend?
be
Yes.
playing. Yep.
So I mean, with that new contract as well, like if he can come in and make an impact, it's not going to change the outcome of the game. But say he's in there, he stuffs the run, stops Alvin Kamara from getting over 100 yards, gets maybe 2 sacks in there somehow. Then all of a sudden, this or some pressures on Derek Carr where he's throwing some interceptions to Jalen Johnson. Then this Bears defense at least can look at it and go, okay, we can get the offense going for next season. Maybe we can turn this around finally. But yeah, the Saints,
Without a doubt, and that's really what it's going to be for the Bears defense this week is just moral
yeah,
victories. If Montez Sweat can go out there and get 2 sacks, I think every Chicago Bears fans, it's just going to be like, well, boom. It's going to be
yeah,
one of those things, and if you don't get that reference, you're probably a little too young, and if you're old enough to get that reference but don't understand it, thank you. But moving forward, we both picking the Saints, I would have to imagine, on
yes.
that particular game. Now moving over to what is likely going to be a pretty decent game where we see the Ravens taking on the Seahawks. Just need to check to see if this is in Seattle or if it's in Baltimore. It is in
It's in
Baltimore.
Baltimore, yeah.
So the Battle of the Birds, but it really wasn't going to change my pick regardless. I have the Ravens winning this game. They have
Hmm.
just looked so good this year, and it's really been that defense that has just been so suffocating, and their offense is just going out there and doing what they need to do. They're not the
Yep,
prettiest offense, they're not the sexiest offense, but they're just going out there and it's like, you know what? We're serviceable. That's all we
yep.
need to be with this defense. And that's kind of been the formula for success for the Ravens in the past. The last time they won, obviously they had Joe Flacco as their quarterback, and no one would say that year that they last won that it was because of Joe Flacco. And yeah, for that reason, the Seahawks, they've been playing a lot better this year. They got Leonard Williams the day before the trade deadline. So decent little move there to help bolster their defensive line. But I think this is going to be a very fun game to watch, but it's ultimately going to be in the hands of the Ravens.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like the Baltimore Ravens have looked good. The injuries haven't quite hit them yet, so that is good news for them. So at this point, I am going to be sticking with the Ravens until this week comes where the inevitable happens and Lamar Jackson gets injured, which I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but it seems to happen every year. He's kind of like the Tony Romo of the AFC, and so I expect it at some point. I just don't know when. For now, I do think the Ravens will be able to beat the Seahawks, though. But they got to make sure to protect him at this point
Yep.
because it's reaching that time of the year where he goes down and the team falls apart.
Yeah, you know what? I'm kind of surprised that we didn't see the Ravens make a move for either an additional offensive lineman or a potential wide receiver in this year's trade deadline. But you know
Yeah.
what? With the way
But
that they've
yeah,
been
I mean
going,
that being said, the Seahawks have looked good. It's are they going to be able to keep pace with the Ravens? If they have one of those explosive games, are they going to be able to keep keep Geno Smith safe? Like it's
yeah,
tough. This could be a trap game for the Ravens too. They got the Browns next week, so big divisional game. Against a really good defense, so they could be looking ahead and end up hurting themselves somehow here.
yeah, definitely could. But now moving over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Houston Texans, and Houston last week, you bastards, not beating the Carolina Panthers and giving them their first win of the year. As a Chicago Bears fan, definitely don't want to see Carolina winning at all or ever. But in this one, you know what? This Houston team has looked better this season for sure, but they are still showing that they are a young team that is deplete of talent. And Tampa Bay,
Mhm.
for all accounts, has looked a lot better than what they've actively shown coming into this year. And with this game being in Houston, I think the Buccaneers are going to end up taking this. They do have even records at 3-4, but I think the Bucks can pull a win out here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we saw a little bit more of what the Texans truly are. I think last week, they are still a team that's growing and building.
Yeah.
They've had some impressive wins this year. They've blown out some teams and just surprised teams. But I didn't feel like it was sustainable, and we're sort of seeing that it's not. Whereas the Bucks, they've been a little bit more consistent, and they haven't been able to hang with the better quality teams that they played against. So I think, yeah, this week they'll be able to go in there, and it'll likely be a sloppy looking game for both sides, but the Bucks will probably pull out a win here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this week has kind of been one of those weeks where you've just been sitting back going like, man, like you're just kind of looking at the games going, damn, like it's
It's
not.
garbage or it's great.
Yeah, exactly. It's either a game of the week quality or
Yeah,
it's I don't want to watch this. And now
yeah.
speaking of another game that realistically neither of us are probably going to watch, it's the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Carolina Panthers. And you know what? I will say this: the Panthers did get their first win last week, but it was an ugly game from start to finish. It was not fun to watch. They beat a team that is also still very young and had some ups and downs, but they're going up against a Colts team a little bit more experience on that side of the ball, and I think a little bit more to prove right now, where they're trying to show a little bit like, hey, no, like everyone's kind of counting us out right now, but we're 3-5. We're going into Charlotte. We are going to try to pull out a win here, and obviously Gardner Minshew, he's been kind of that definition of the guy that is always he kind of feels like he's going to be the new Ryan Fitzpatrick, where he's going to bounce around from team to team. He's going to put up a lot of good numbers, or he's going to put up a lot of good game film, but he's never going to be a star quarterback that anyone's like, we want to build our team around it. That kind of feels like what Gardner Minshew is ultimately going to be, but I think the Colts are just going to be a little too much for this Panthers team. We're going to see the Panthers kind of fall back to that, you know,
Hmm.
pace that we saw them at before. And going back to my younger days, I'm gonna turn into an Indianapolis Colts fan for that game, because I need the Panthers to lose.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about the Panthers. I don't see any way they're going to be able to pull out a win. Even last week, I didn't see a way they could win. It was really just because it ended up being an ugly game on both sides. Whereas I don't think we'll see that this week. The Colts have really started finding their identity on offense here. They finally started getting Michael Pittman Jr. involved in the offense, which was key because now teams can't just sort of key in on that run game and stopping Taylor and Moss. They
Yep.
have to worry about the passing game as well now. And I think that's going to benefit the Colts going forward. I think we're going to see a good, complete game from the Colts this week. Make easy work of the Panthers, good stat line for all the offense on this Colts team. It'll be a good week, a good boost for them going forward, because ultimately it is it's a foot race between them and the Titans to see if either of them can catch this Jags team that is just on fire right now.
Yeah, yeah, and it's gonna be really tough for I think any team in that AFC South to even catch the Jags, just because they are
Mhm.
so on fire right now. They're probably one of the best teams in the NFL. Or they definitely have had the best stretch, but we'll talk about them in a little bit. But now moving over to the Raiders taking on the Giants. Sterling, take us away, buddy.
Oh my God, we were talking about dumpster fire games. This is one of them.
Yep.
I
Yep.
didn't know who to pick, which says a lot because I mean, typically you see the Giants, you're picking against the Giants. But the problem right now is the Raiders have just looked so horrible. They can't even get Devontae Adams involved in the game. From my understanding, Jimmy Garoppolo benched.
Hmm.
Done. They're done
Out.
with Jimmy G. Fired their head coach, fired their GM. Like it is tearing the place down. That being said, it's the Giants. I don't know that I can pick the Giants to win. It's in Vegas, and I think maybe the spark of a young quarterback in there maybe will ignite something and he'll get the ball to Devontae Adams and he'll be able to score a touchdown, which likely will be all you need to beat the Giants. So reluctantly picking the Raiders to win because I didn't want to pick either team in this one, man.
Yeah, and I'm also picking the Raiders in this one, but this was one of those games where I went back to that old thing where you see a team fire their head coach mid-season, and it just kind of sparks, gives them a spark. And if you saw the Raiders locker room on trade deadline day, or pardon me, after the trade deadline, like I think a video came out Thursday morning where it
Yeah, because
was they
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 didn't
were partying
fire. Yeah, they fired him and announced it at like 1 a.m. after
on
trade deadline day. So
yeah.
it was Wednesday when really the players all started getting the news, and when they got to the training facility, and that was where we saw that celebration, and then it all came out Thursday.
Yeah, and I think the Raiders right now they're probably gonna play with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more swagger. Devonte Adams is likely gonna have a big game because the coaching staff is like, okay, well we can't throw him the ball 7 times, but be over his head in this way and that way, and he only has one catch. That's not good enough. We need to
Mhm.
scheme him open. We need to scheme him catches because when Devonte Adams is given the ball, he is a top 5 receiver doesn't like he quite possibly the best wide receiver in football. It's just
Yeah.
right now this year, the unfortunate nature of it is that he just wasn't getting the ball, which is so dumb.
Well, and I feel for him to an extent, but at the same time, he's done this to himself.
Yep.
He left the Packers. He's said, I want to play with my buddy Derek Carr. You know, goes to fucking
Vegas.
Vegas, plays with him halfway through the season. They bench Carr
Yep.
and then move on from him. And Devonte Adams is just there, like, I signed a contract to come here and play with him.
And you know what?
The,
He had a
don't worry, we'll
great
bring Jimmy
year
G
with
in for you,
yeah.
who also just overthrows everything on him. And it's just so I feel for him that he's not in the situation he, agreed to go to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you left a Hall of Fame quarterback. If you had stuck around, you probably could have just gone to the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. Granted, he'd be in the same boat right now because he wouldn't have Rodgers throwing him the ball, but
Yep.
the Jets look better than the Raiders, so
Well, Zach Wilson this year is looking somewhat competent. Like
yeah.
all that time spent with Aaron Rodgers and maybe a little ayahuasca break between those two, it's definitely like he's looked better. But
Yeah.
yeah, you and I both feel for Devonte Adams. But moving over to what we have both kind of agreed is likely going to be game of the week, where we see the Eagles taking on the Cowboys, and take it away, my friend.
Yeah, for any of the non-prime time games, this likely is going to be the best game we see this week, purely because it doesn't even matter what the record is. Eagles Cowboys is always a slugfest.
Yes.
These teams hate each other. It's one of the best rivalries we see in football every year. I always enjoy watching these games no matter who's playing. And this year we have two teams that, one is consistently quite explosive no matter which target they have. In the Eagles, they've got Brown, they've got Smith, they've got Goddard, they've got Swift, they got Jalen Hurts. Any one of them can go off on any given week. And then you've got the Cowboys on the other side, which, week to week, we don't know what we're getting. But last week, they looked good. He got CeeDee Lamb involved. They were on point. Lamb had one of the best statistical games he's had. It's it was a great setup for this week.
Yep.
I'm hoping we see the same. I really want to just see a shootout of Hurts
Prescott.
and Prescott just airing it out. Getting it down the field, get Tony Pollard involved. Like, let's see a high-scoring game. I want this game to end like 45-42. That's what I'm looking for in this game. I do think it will be the Eagles because they just have so much more talent on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
They're not dealing with as many injury issues as the Cowboys are, especially on defense. I think they'll just be able to, as the game goes on, really come together and start playing more consistently. Whereas the Cowboys, I feel like, start to get sloppier as the game goes on. And so I think that's what we'll see that real separation between the two, and the Eagles ultimately will come out on top. But yeah, I have a feeling this could be a really fun game to watch.
Yeah, and in our pre-cast meeting that we always have, it was kind of the question of, is it going to be a shootout or is it going to be a defensive battle? And I kind of sat there thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, this is likely going to be a shootout, just because both teams, they have really good defenses, but they've also struggled at times. And I feel like this year both offenses have also struggled at times as well. And since this is
Yep.
a division rivalry game, I feel like defense could potentially go to the wind, and ultimately the I think the Eagles are indeed going to take this one, just because I don't have faith in Dak Prescott. I think in some of these really, really tough games, he
And he
folds.
just and he just doesn't have as many weapons.
That is
Again,
also
this
true.
is something we'll talk about a little bit later, but like the outside of CeeDee Lamb and then handing it off or throwing it check down to Tony Pollard, he doesn't have a lot.
Yep.
And that is what hurts them right now, because the Eagles can look at it and go, "Oh, you've shut down AJ Brown. Okay, well then I'm going to throw it to Devontae Smith. Oh, you somehow shut down both of those guys,
Well, I'm
then
going to throw it to Dallas
guaranteed
Goddard.
Dallas Goddard is open over the middle."
Or
If you
not Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift is going to just get the ball and just run it down your throat. Or Jalen Hurts is going
exactly,
to have a throwing just to whoever's open and rush the ball.
yeah,
And yeah,
there's too many weapons for the Eagles, whereas the Cowboys, that's not a problem they have. They don't have much for weapons, and that is what ultimately keeps hurting them right now.
yeah. Now moving over to what I think is my game of the week, where we have the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Buffalo Bills, and kind of a mirror of last year, where we saw these two teams meet in a primetime game, where it was likely going to be just an absolute unbelievable one. But unfortunately, Damar Hamlin had the situation. Glad to see he's a-okay and still playing football. But I don't think that we're going to have to worry about that, or, and knock on wood that we don't have to worry about a situation like that. But this is the game that we were kind of hoping for, and now we get to see it in the regular season. And this Cincinnati Bengals team, now that Joe Burrow is healthy, they are swinging heavy shots and they are out in full force. And the Bills, they just week after week continue to trip over their own feet. And I think the Bengals are just going to be way too much for this Bills team. And I think the Bills are just going to kind of be looking up, going, like, please, sir, just take my lunch money and go. I don't need to get hit anymore.
Yeah, and I mean that's it. This is the game last season so many of us were looking forward to because both teams were on fire.
Yes.
The problem this year is the Bills do not look as good as they did last year.
No.
And man, Joe Burrow is healthy. Joe Burrow is angry, and Joe Burrow is that dude right now. My God, I was watching that game last week, and he's running the ball. He's throwing the shoulder down. He's taking hits. He's getting right back up and right in the players' faces. He is. If he keeps going this way, he's your MVP this year,
Yeah.
hands down.
Has to
Like,
be.
even with how badly he played to start this year, how horrible his stats were while he was playing hurt. Like, if he keeps going the way he is going to just turn this league around. Um, that being said, we've talked about it for about 4 weeks now. Josh Allen plays to his opponent, and lately we've been seeing him play like Mac Jones. We've been seeing him play like I don't remember who else he was playing against, but he was bad.
Yep.
He's going up against Joe Burrow this week. So we might see that guy, Josh Allen, come out and be putting up some points as well. We forget he's got some offensive playmakers, some good weapons there. And if he does do his typical thing where he plays to the quality of what he's up against, this could be an excellent game to watch. And it's so fun when we get to see two great teams, two great quarterbacks playing head to head Sunday Night Football. Um, Ultimately, though, as much as I hate them, I don't want them winning. I have to go with the Bengals here. Joe Burrow just looks too good right now. He's hitting every target that's open. He's like I said, he's that guy right now. And somebody's gonna have to stop them. I don't think it's gonna be this Bills team though.
No.
Bengals win.
Now moving into the Monday night football game. Chargers going back-to-back weeks on primetime football, but they are taking on the Jets after the Chargers beat the holy hell out of the Bears and backup quarterback Tyson Bagent. They now go up against this Jets team who again has just been one of those teams that's just been up and down, and but they've been so grindy and so feisty, and they've been able to find some wins. And for that very reason, I have the Jets winning this game just because I think that last week the Chargers, it was their, oh, this is our get right game against the Bears. But you cannot continue to tell me that Brandon Staley deserves that head coaching job right now and just keeping this team together, because the Jets, yeah, sure, they don't have Aaron Rodgers, but they have one of the best defenses in the NFL. They have a head coach who sits them down and says they are going to have to shoot us in the head to win. And even then, that's not going to stop us. We're going to get up. We're like, I hate to use the phrase, but we're going to bite their kneecaps on the way back up. And, we're going to make them just as bloody and bruised as they put us through. And I just have this feeling that the Jets are going to win this game.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me. I've said it a couple times already this season. I'm tired of watching the Jets or the Giants in prime time, man.
Yep.
Like they're not good enough to be there every week, but it's this was a game I had a hard time picking because it is. It's one week the Chargers look like they're finally on track, but again, that was against the Bears, which I don't think
Means,
you'll take offense in saying it's one of the worst teams. It's not the team you want to have your we're back game against.
yep.
This should be the game where the Chargers are going in saying, okay, AFC opponent, somebody
Fighting with
we're
right now for
behind in the
playoffs.
standings right now. We have to win this game to really make a statement. And I just Staley finds ways to lose.
That he does.
Um, but I just much like the Browns, when they're playing a team like the Cardinals, yeah, I pick the Browns, but most of the time I can't pick them because the Browns just show they know how to lose, and the Jets for me, it's the same sort of thing. It's hard for me to pick the Jets to win most games, and for that reason, I just feel like the Chargers will be able to do more on offense. If that Jets defense finds a way to shut down the Eckler Allen combination, then yes, it'll be close. But the fact that they were able to get Eckler involved last week, if they can keep him involved in the offense, then this Chargers offense becomes unstoppable.
Yeah.
We've seen it before. If Eckler is able to get the ball, that opens Keenan Allen up, and this team becomes lights out.
Yeah.
And so that is key for them. And then on defense, they just need to not make mistakes. Limit your mistakes. Hopefully Khalil Mack can get in there and get some pressure on Wilson, and we'll see. But I am picking the Chargers for this one just because I have a hard time picking the Jets for anything.
I hear you, man. It's gonna be one of those games that, again, we've kind of talked about, of just one of those we just don't really want to watch it because it's just
Right?
these two teams. But now moving over to the Thursday night game where we get to have another garbage game, and unfortunately, it also holds my Chicago Bears in it. But they are facing off against the Carolina Panthers, and the Bears, they have shown that they can go toe to toe with bad teams. They have shown that when it comes to facing off against teams like the Commanders, teams like the Raiders, teams like the Broncos, they can fight and they can have a fighting chance at winning. Shut up. Stop making that face. We should have won that Broncos game. We didn't, but we should
Yeah,
have.
sure, could would have.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I truly believe that the Bears are looking at this going, you know what? This is a game that we have to win. Because if the Panthers win that game, that puts them tied with the same record for the Bears.
Yeah.
And that just really messes up this draft plan going forward. You need to beat down the Carolina Panthers. And I said at the beginning of the year, and I even wrote about it, that I think DJ Moore could have a statement type game here. We saw him have a statement game against the Commanders on Thursday night. Justin Fields is likely going to be back for that Thursday night game. And I think DJ Moore could have an even better game than what he had against the Commanders. Obviously, having Fields back, he's going to be looking at this Panthers team going, yeah, you guys traded this away. Yeah, yeah, sure, you might have wanted to go get the quarterback of your future, and you didn't do that for me the entire time I was there. I'm here in Chicago. This is what you're missing. It's kind of like that AJ Brown game last year against the Tennessee Titans, where the
Hmm.
Titans GM got fired the game after because of how bad that trade was. But yeah, I think having Montez Sweat there for the Bears as well, it's really really going to help them, and I think the Bears are going to take that game.
Yeah, this is going to be probably one of the ugliest games we've seen all year because of that. It is hands down two of the worst teams.
Yeah,
That being said, the Bears have had more glimmers of hope throughout the year, whereas the Panthers have not. So I do agree. I think the Bears are going to win, but it is going to very much ride on DJ Moore going out there and having that statement game against the team that traded him away and refused to ever get him a,
a quarterback.
a worthy quarterback. And I feel like you're right. He's going to go out there. My concern with Justin Fields being back is yes, he's been practicing, yes, he's been throwing the ball, but that injury was on the throwing hand thumb, which is so important for, with a guy like DJ Moore, those precision type passes where he's going to win the battle against the cornerback, break the tackle and go. If you're not perfectly precise on those very easily turn into interceptions instead.
Yeah.
And so that is my only concern there. I hope Justin Fields is feeling 100%. I hope he can grip the ball well for those passes because I would love to see DJ Moore go off against this Panthers team.
Yeah. Are you picking the Bears or picking the
I am
Panthers?
picking the Bears. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I
yeah,
am picking
cool,
the
cool.
Bears.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so those are our picks moving in. But kind of the last little bit here, typically what we would do after this is move into our top five and bottom five. But seeing as we have gotten to the halfway point of the year, just kind of taking a look here at all of our picks and how we have done personally so far this year. So far this year, I am 78 for 45 for a win loss. So I'm having myself a pretty good year. Now, with that being said, you have convinced me and changed me of a couple picks, so that's one of those things where we're allowed to have walking in and changing picks for sure. That's something that we can do. But yeah, that is currently my record, 78 and 45 at this point in the year.
Yeah, and I mean we've had fun doing this, and we both have had some very off weeks. I had at least one very bad week. I
It was
expected
like
our
two or
records
three
to be a
weeks
little bit
ago.
closer than they are right now, but I'm currently sitting at 72 and 50
Okay.
myself. Yeah, and so I seem to have really good records through my primetime games and very bad records through the 11 a.m. games. It's almost like I'm picking like the Pittsburgh Steelers play.
Yes, yes, indeed. But yeah, so yeah, one of those things where it's just, I guess, I thought we were going to be fairly close, but I
Hmm.
think early on in the year, that's what kind of separated us because we were making a bunch of different picks.
Yeah.
And then like, I'm pretty sure last week we had pretty much the exact same picks with maybe the exception of one. But these last few weeks, it's been like one or two game differences. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, now moving over into our top five and bottom five for the last little bit of part one of this podcast. Yeah, so Stan, give us your top five, buddy.
Oh, well, it been a bit of a shakeup this week for sure. We saw some more losses for certain teams like the Niners last week. We saw the Chiefs go down as well. So my top five looks pretty different. Right now, sitting at the number 5 spot, I've had the Lions climb themselves back in. So they're sitting in my top five. Just ahead of them, I've got the Miami Dolphins. This was tough. The 4-5. There were like four teams there where they all sort of won, but they won against bad opponents. So it was hard for me to really slate them in there. My top three, I'm much more confident in. It's sitting at number three right now. I have the Baltimore Ravens. They have been a hot commodity. They've been winning consistently, and they've been winning convincingly. Ahead of that, I have to have the Jaguars continue climbing my list because they still have not lost. They're up to 5 wins in a row. Didn't lose it all throughout October. They're now on their bye week, so they get a good week of rest. And so I have the Jags sitting at number two, and then the Eagles have made their way back to my top spot this week.
Yeah, so the Chiefs have completely fallen out of your top five. It's very
I mean,
interesting.
losing to the Broncos, that's a really bad team to lose to.
Yeah,
And so that was why ultimately they fell below the Dolphins and the Lions, just because of such a bad team. Like you lost to a team that the Dolphins beat with by putting up 70 points. And
without a
so
doubt.
that was where I was like, no, the Dolphins and the Chiefs, Chiefs out, Dolphins in. I
Fair.
expect next week to change, with
Yeah.
how my picks were this week, but it's getting sloppy in the tops
It
lately.
it
The
is. It
bottom is
is.
much more consistent. The worst teams are being way more consistent than the best teams right now. The Niners started 5-0 and now they're sitting at 5-3.
Yep. And I do not have the San Francisco 49ers in my top five. At
I
number
couldn't.
five, I have the Miami Dolphins. I think there's a bunch of 6-2 teams that it's kind of just hard to juggle, and you're just kind of looking at it going like,
Yeah.
I could have them. But yeah, right now Miami, I think they have beaten the teams that they're supposed to beat, and they've struggled against the teams that we thought they were going to struggle against. But ultimately, they are one of the most fun teams to watch in the NFL right now. They deserve to be in the top five, and they're there. The Jacksonville Jaguars are my fourth team on this list. They have just been so good over these last couple of weeks, but early on, those struggles they still kind of creeped in there, and I don't think these top three teams can really leave. My or my third best team in the NFL is the Baltimore Ravens. That defense again is so suffocating, and the offense, kind of like what we talked about earlier, they've just done exactly what they've needed to do. Um, Unlike you, I still have the Kansas City Chiefs in the top five. Patrick Mahomes, he was dealing with altitude. Well, he still had the flu, and I think that's probably the only reason that they ended up losing against the Broncos. And you know, I'm still not convinced that they would be booted out of the top five here at the moment just because of that loss. It's an ugly loss for sure, but I can't be convinced that they shouldn't be in the top five. And regaining the top spot in the NFL is the Philadelphia Eagles, the only one-loss team still remaining in the entire NFL right now. And it hasn't been pretty, it hasn't been sexy, but they've worked their asses off to get to this point and to get to this record. Now moving over to your bottom five, good sir.
Bottom five looks pretty similar to what it did last week. Honestly, it's the two teams that have been bouncing around the bubble there just sort of swapped spots for me because one won and one lost. Broncos beat the Chiefs and the Bears lost to the Chargers. So I have the Bears sitting at 28th now, and then my bottom four are the exact same as last week. I've got Patriots, Giants, Cardinals, Panthers.
Yeah, so I have a new addition to the bottom five, which makes me oh so happy. But at pick number 28, it is at the Green Bay Packers. They look dog shit, and it makes me so happy. But they deserve to be in the bottom five at this point. I said for the last couple weeks they are on that bubble territory right now of being there.
Oh
Them
yeah, they are for me too, man. It's just those other five teams are just too much worse.
Yeah, and I honestly thought about putting the Patriots here, but with what the Packers were supposed to be this year with Jordan Love, and after those first couple weeks, it's going okay. Like
Yeah.
you told us you weren't worried that Aaron Rodgers had left your squad, and that you were a-okay with Jordan Love, but you haven't been. And the Patriots, we knew they were going to be bad. I think a lot of us thought the Packers were going to be bad as well, but you know, now it's like okay, you tried to tell us, but you're not showing us now, and you definitely deserve to be there. And the Patriots, they beat the Bills. So for me, that's the only reason that I have them currently out of my bottom five. But Bears at 29, Giants at 30, Cardinals at 31, and Panthers at 32. No real change up there other than the Bears
Mhm.
dropping from 28 to 29, and the Patriots and Broncos exiting that particular. But yeah, that is where the top five and bottom five currently stand. And so now